welcome to Crossfire, the show that dives into the heart of global conflicts where nations collide, alliances shift, and lives hang in the balance. Tonight, we tackle the explosive developments shaking Europe and the world to its core. Russia has retaliated against Biden's decision as Putin issues direct threats to the West. The battlefield in Ukraine edges closer to a point of no return. The war between Russia and Ukraine has reached a tipping point. A provocative move by Putin signals a new and dangerous escalation in the conflict. So now the question is, are we witnessing the start of a broader confrontation that could spiral beyond Ukraine's border? Our next report unpacks this escalating crisis for you.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has issued a stark warning to the West through a missile strike on the eastern Ukrainian city of Dnipro, asserting that the attack involved a new conventional intermediate-range missile, codenamed Oreshnik. In a recent address, Putin stated that this missile was a direct response to Ukraine's use of long-range weaponry supplied by the United States and the United Kingdom to target Russian territory. He further warned that Russia could retaliate against military facilities in those countries that allow their weapons to be used against Russia. This development comes after the US and UK authorized the use of long-range missiles, including the American ATACMS and the British Storm Shadow missiles, marking a significant shift in Western military support for Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned Russia's missile strike as a clear and severe escalation in the conflict, asserting that it demonstrates Russia's lack of interest in pursuing peace. He emphasized that Putin is not only prolonging the war but is also disregarding global calls for peace. Zelensky described the missile as having characteristics similar to an intercontinental ballistic missile or an ICBM, although Western officials have expressed skepticism about this claim. The US National Security Council confirmed that an experimental medium-range ballistic missile was used in the attack, but noted that Russia likely possesses only a limited number of these weapons, which would not significantly change the dynamics of the war. In his address, Putin claimed that a successful test was conducted on a non-nuclear hypersonic version of a ballistic missile, stating that it reached its target. He asserted that there is no way to counteract this weapon, which can strike at speeds of up to 10 Mach. Putin warned the West that Russia is prepared for any developments and reiterated that there will always be a response to perceived threats. Military analysts suggest that while the introduction of intermediate-range ballistic missiles, or IRBMs, may not drastically alter battlefield dynamics, it serves as a symbolic reminder of Russia's extensive arsenal and its readiness to develop more advanced capabilities. Matthew Seville from Rusi think tank noted that such moves follow Russia's updated nuclear doctrine, which many interpret as lowering the threshold for nuclear engagement. Only last week, US President Joe Biden authorized Ukraine to use long-range army tactical missile systems against targets inside Russia. Following this decision, Ukraine reportedly launched these missiles into Russia's Bryansk region. In response to these developments, Putin has intensified airstrikes against Ukrainian infrastructure while his ground forces continue their offensive in eastern Ukraine. The situation is further complicated by reports of North Korean troops being deployed to support Russian forces in the Kursk region. The geopolitical landscape is shifting as Donald Trump prepares to return to the US presidency in January 2025. Trump has promised to end US involvement in overseas conflicts and redirect resources towards domestic issues. His potential influence on US-Ukraine relations raises questions about future military support for Kiev. Putin's announcement and subsequent military actions underscore a precarious escalation in hostilities between Russia and Ukraine, with both sides signaling their readiness for prolonged conflict. As Western nations continue to support Ukraine militarily, the risk of direct confrontation with Russia remains high, raising concerns about stability in the region and beyond. Bureau Report, India Today Global.
Did Russia use an ICBM against Ukraine? Now this is the question everyone's asking, and the answer is no. Russia used a medium-range ballistic missile to hit Ukraine's Dnipro region. But the question is, how do these missiles shape up the balance of power and what makes them so deadly? Our next report delves into the secrets of Russia's new weapon. Russia's new weapon in the battlefield, hypersonic ballistic missile with medium range. Is this aggressive posturing, a threat for an impending nuclear attack, or just Russia's bluff? In any case, Russia launching a ballistic missile with medium range on Ukraine's Dnipro marks a significant escalation, as this comes after Ukraine used the United States ATACMS and UK's Storm Shadow missiles. So what was the weapon used by Russia? Let's decode. Now, unlike the initial reports that claimed Moscow used an intercontinental ballistic missile, it has now been confirmed that what Russia used is Orishnik, one of its newest intermediate-range missiles. Now, the name in Russian means a hazelnut tree, and the missile was reportedly launched from an area located about 800 kilometers away from Dnipro. And this caused damage to the industrial sites and resulted in injuries to civilians. Now, according to the Russian president, the missile can travel at 10 times the speed of sound and thus cannot be intercepted. In terms of range, the missile is capable of traveling up to 5,000 kilometers. Now, this allows Russia to strike most of Europe and even the west coast of the United States. And when it comes to its payload capacity, experts say the missile can carry 6 to 8 conventional or nuclear warheads. The missile also made of technology called as multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle. Now, these vehicles allow missile to deploy multiple warheads, each hitting different locations at the same time. This increases the missile's effectiveness in delivering large-scale damage just with a single launch. Now, this is because MIRVs were originally developed for nuclear warheads. Now, according to Washington, this missile is based on the design of Russia's longer-range RS-26 intercontinental ballistic missile, and Russia possesses only a limited number of these new weapons. In fact, the attack marks the first time that the missile was employed on the battlefield, according to experts. The RS-26 is a 40-ton solid-fuel road-mobile intercontinental ballistic missile, and its development started in the year 2008. Now, this incident has raised alarms within NATO, as the launch may influence member countries' decisions on air defense systems. The attack also comes against a backdrop of heightened nuclear rhetoric from Russia, including updates to its nuclear doctrine. At large, the development has raised concerns about the potential for further escalation in military responses from both the sides engaged in this war. Bureau Report, India Today Global. As US President Joe Biden races against time to bolster Ukraine, NATO nations brace for war's potential spillover. The question now is, what direction will the conflict take as battlefield developments intensify? Our next report breaks it down for you with defense expert Glenn Grant.
Fools!
So my first question to you is, Russia fired a hypersonic intermediate range ballistic missile at the Ukraine in the city of Dnipro, and Russian president has clearly said that this is a warning to the West. So how do you see this development? How big is this?
I think it's less big than people realize.
Okay.
I mean, if you take, first of all, on the Ukrainian side, there is nothing unusual about this for the Ukrainians, because if you're fighting for your life, then you expect the other side to use all the weapons that they've got. And I think a large amount of Ukrainians genuinely expect that Putin might one day fire a nuclear weapon, but that's not going to change anything on that side. But for the West, I mean, there was a lot of panic yesterday. You could actually see that in the press and in the news. And I was interviewed 3 times yesterday, and they were all panicky type questions about, what does this mean? Is it going to change? I think Putin is using this to send a warning. I mean, he didn't use it to destroy anything, because it was actually although it's a very powerful missile, it was an extremely weak warhead. So it is only a warning. But this war is going to continue as it's going. I mean, the main thing is Putin believes he's winning. Yeah, people have to understand that, because what he's doing to NATO, what he's doing to the European Union in terms of churning it up with Hungary and other leaders who are sort of semi-working towards Putin's ambitions. So the last thing that Putin wants to do is to break his progress by firing something like a nuclear weapon, which would then turn many countries that are at the moment half pro towards him, you could say even India, into people who are going to say, no, this is not acceptable. So he's just going to want to keep playing the way that he's playing at the moment because his forces are moving forward in the east of Ukraine, and he doesn't want to spoil that.
You know, you rightly mentioned that it's a lot about optics and symbolic gesturing of anger. But sir, you mentioned that it's a weak warhead. And I think this weapon that Russia used has, of course, created a lot of buzz. So could you go ahead and explain to us what this weapon means and how is it actually a weak warhead?
Well, it's this particular rocket, if you want to call it that, basically has six small rockets inside it. So It would be, if it was nuclear, you'd be looking at 6 small nuclear weapons which come down and attack. But because there's no nuclear warhead in it, they basically just put about 30 kilograms of explosive in each one, which is actually far, far, far less than the weapons that they've been using, the old heavy bombs that they've been using on the front line and against buildings. So it really was just public relations for both internally for Putin's team and externally to create the buzz and hype that we've got at the moment.
Imagine living through nights dominated by the sounds of gunshots, anguished cries, and chilling and distorted music. Now, this is life for residents of Ganghwa Island in South Korea. Take a look at our next report as we explore North Korea's latest psychological warfare tactics.
Imagine living with the constant sound of gunshots, blood-curdling screams, and eerie laughter every single night. For the residents of Ganghwa Island in South Korea, this isn't just a nightmare. It's their reality. North Korea has unleashed a chilling psychological warfare campaign, blasting these horrifying noises from loudspeakers near the border. Starting every night at 11 p.m., the sounds of battle, cries of agony, and even creepy horror film-style music disrupt what was once a peaceful community. Experts are calling it noise torture, a deliberate attempt to cause anxiety, sleepless nights, and long-term health issues for the border residents. And this isn't the first time North Korea has employed such bizarre tactics. Earlier this year, Pyongyang launched thousands of balloons into South Korea, filled with trash and even human feces. The balloons landed in busy streets, residential areas, and public spaces, creating both chaos and disgust. Why? It was a tit-for-tat response to South Korean activists who sent anti-North Korean pamphlets and USB drives loaded with K-pop content into the North. These pamphlets often criticize North Korea's human rights record or mock its leader Kim Jong-un. While North Korea despises these leaflet campaigns, it has for years retaliated with its own propaganda using balloons to send similar materials across the border. Experts suggest that these tactics are part of Kim Jong-un's grey zone warfare actions designed to provoke and destabilize but stop short of actual conflict. While these campaigns may seem bizarre or petty, they are rooted in a broader strategy of hostility and psychological pressure against the South. Residents in Ganghwa Island are now pleading with the South Korean government for action. Many are suffering from sleep disorders, headaches, and severe stress. Their peaceful nights have turned into an unrelenting psychological battleground, and their patience is wearing thin. Analysts are now questioning where this might lead. Is Kim Jong-un simply escalating his rhetoric, or could these provocations signal something far more dangerous on the horizon? For now, one thing is clear. This psychological warfare is taking its toll on the people caught in the middle. Bureau Report, India Today Global.
And now it's time to wrap up this edition of Crossfire. Thank you viewers for staying with us. Stay tuned to India Today Global for more such updates.